I'm Daniel. I'm 32 years old, and my entire life changed because of a single text message that blew up my world. Before I tell you about the explosive FaceTime call that ended with me hanging up on my entire family and getting on a plane, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can reach. Started on a Tuesday morning. A completely ordinary Tuesday. The sky was that dull, gray color it gets in early fall, and the coffee I was drinking was just okay. I was sitting at my kitchen counter, scrolling through work emails on my laptop, when my phone buzzed. The sound was sharp in the quiet of my apartment. It was my younger brother, Leo. I smiled a little, a reflex I hadn't yet managed to extinguish. Leo rarely texted unless he needed something, but for a split second, that old, foolish hope flared up. Maybe it was just a "Hey, how are you?" Maybe he wanted to share some good news for once. It wasn't. The message was sprawled across my screen in all caps, vibrating with a level of entitlement that was breathtaking even for him. "Hey man, big news. I'm quitting my job. You'll take care of us while I figure things out." I read it once, then twice. My brain struggled to process the sheer audacity. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of fact, a royal decree. Us was a heavily loaded term. It meant him, my mom, and my dad. And take care of us was a euphemism for becoming their sole financial provider. I would pay the mortgage on their house, the car insurance, the groceries, his endless stream of brilliant ideas that evaporated into credit card debt. Again, something inside me, a tightly wound spring of resentment that I had been compressing for over a decade, finally snapped with a silent, deafening crack. My fingers moved with a life of their own, flying across the keyboard before my lifetime of conditioning could scream at me to stop. I typed back a sentence I had never, in my entire 32 years, said to my family. "That's not on me, Leo." I stabbed the send button. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. The digital silence that followed was immense, a vacuum where years of my compliance used to be. For the first time, the endless, grasping black hole of my family's needs had demanded, and I had refused. My phone started buzzing again almost instantly, a frantic, angry vibration on the granite countertop. It was my mom, Eleanor. I stared at her picture and pressed ignore. Then my dad, Richard. Ignored. Then Leo again. Ignored. My hands were shaking, not with fear, but with a strange, terrifying, exhilarating sense of freedom. My gaze drifted to my laptop screen, to an email I had been staring at for a week. An offer letter. Senior software engineer. In Dublin, Ireland. It was a huge promotion, a life-changing opportunity. A salary that could finally belong to me and me alone. I had been too scared to accept it, too tangled in the web of familial obligation. Who would pay for the next emergency if I were gone? But Leo's text, it wasn't a cry for help. It was a demand for my servitude. I clicked reply. My fingers were steady now. "Dear Mr. Miller, I am thrilled to formally accept the position. I look forward to starting on Monday." I attached the signed contract and hit send. A wave of nausea and pure adrenaline washed over me. I had just pulled the pin on a grenade and dropped it in the center of my life. 10 minutes later, as the incoming call notifications finally subsided, my phone lit up with a new text. It was from my mom. My blood ran cold as I read the words. "Daniel, we need to talk. If you won't help your brother, don't even think about coming to Thanksgiving." The ultimatum landed with the force of a physical blow. The battle lines were drawn. I didn't know it then, but this was only the opening salvo in a war I never wanted, but one that would ultimately set me free. To understand why that Tuesday felt like the end of the world and the beginning of a new one, you need to understand the suffocating weight of the days that came before it. You have to see the life I was living not as a series of isolated events, but as a long, grinding pattern of expectation and erosion. Let's go back a few months, to a quiet evening on my couch. The TV was on, some mindless sitcom, but I wasn't watching. I was staring at my online banking portal, specifically at a credit card statement. A charge for $2,500 stood out, glowing with digital mockery. The description read, "Advanced Cinematography Masterclass." It was the final payment for a course my brother Leo had proclaimed would be his ticket to Sundance. He was going to be the next Tarantino. All he needed were the right tools. He'd lasted 3 weeks before deciding the instructor lacked vision and stifled his creative process. As if on cue, my phone rang. The caller ID was Mom. Her voice, when I answered, was as bright and airy as a summer morning. "Hi, honey. Just calling to check in on my wonderful, responsible son." The title always felt less like a compliment and more like a job description. "I'm fine, Mom," I said, my voice flatter than I intended. My eyes were still fixed on the 5-figure number representing Leo's fleeting passion. "Just sorting out some finances." "Oh, that's my Daniel. Always on top of things. It's a gift, you know. Your brother, he's not built for the mundane. That film course, it was so enlightening for him. It helped him realize he needs to forge his own path, not be trapped by rigid structures." I had to physically restrain myself from laughing. His own path was a trail of debt he blazed through my bank account. "Yeah, I heard," I managed to say. "He's got this revolutionary idea for a web series now. It's truly brilliant. He just needs a little runway to get it off the ground, a little bit of seed funding." I knew exactly who the seed funder would be. My girlfriend, Chloe, walked into the living room then, carrying 2 mugs of chamomile tea. She glanced at the phone, then at my face, and her smile faded into that look of gentle exasperation she reserved for my family. She sat beside me, a silent, supportive presence until I finished the call with a vague promise to think about the seed funding. She handed me a mug. "Let me guess," she said softly. "The Leo Fund is soliciting another round of investment?" I just nodded, letting the warm ceramic seep into my cold hands. "You know this isn't normal, right?" she continued, her voice devoid of judgment, full of genuine concern. "You're not their retirement plan, Daniel. You're not his brother's keeper, especially when his version of keeping involves you never getting to live your own life. You're enabling him. It's just complicated," I mumbled, the same weak excuse I always used. "It's easier than starting a massive fight. The arguments, the guilt trips, my mom crying. It's exhausting. A big divorce of loyalties and emotions. Sometimes it's less painful to just pay the bill." "Is it?" she pressed, her gaze steady. "Or is it just a different kind of pain? A slow burn instead of a wildfire? You work 60 hours a week. For what? So he can chase another whim? You haven't taken a real vacation in 3 years. You talk about buying a house someday, but how can you when you're paying a mortgage on their bad decisions?" She was right. Every word was a pinpoint of truth. The exhaustion I felt wasn't just physical. It was a soul-deep weariness, the fatigue of being perpetually responsible for people who refused to be responsible for themselves. I was the reliable, boring, stable foundation, and my purpose, it seemed, was to allow my brilliant, charming, and utterly feckless brother to build his magnificent sandcastles. But I was the one living on sand, and the tide was coming in. The family dinner was our most cherished and most toxic ritual. Every other Sunday, we'd convene at La Trattoria, a middle-of-the-road Italian joint with ambitions beyond its cooking. To an outsider, we probably looked like the perfect family, laughing, sharing stories over pasta and wine. But it was a stage play, and I was the unwitting producer, footing the bill for the whole production. The evening always began with my father, Richard, raising his glass of Chianti. "A toast," he'd boom, his voice resonating with false cheer. "To Daniel, to our boy who's making it in the big leagues." Everyone would raise their glasses, murmuring agreement. "To Daniel," Leo would grin, knowing full well my big league salary was about to pay for his veal parmesan and multiple cocktails. My role was to smile tightly and accept the honor. It was a transaction disguised as a tribute. On one particularly memorable night, just a month before the final blow-up, the performance was at its peak. Leo, fresh off his filmmaking revelation, was holding court. He described his abandoned web series with the passion of a true auteur. The whole concept was an allegorical critique of late-stage capitalism. He declared, gesticulating with a breadstick. It was deeply layered. Lynchian, you know? Oh, sweetie, that sounds so profound. My mother, Eleanor, cooed, her eyes shining with blind adoration. She then turned that gaze on me, and it was like a spotlight designed to expose my own mediocrity. It's a heavy burden to have a mind like your brother's. You're fortunate, Daniel. You have your steady job, your promotions, your 401k. You don't have to wrestle with the complexities of true artistic vision. It was her signature move. A compliment wrapped around an insult. She could make my hard-won success sound like a consolation prize for a lack of soul. My stability wasn't an accomplishment. It was proof that I was pedestrian. My Aunt Carol, my mom's sister, was sitting next to me. Carol was the family's designated Switzerland, the professional smoother of feathers. She leaned in, placing a conspiratorial hand on my forearm. "You have the patience of a saint, Daniel," she whispered. "Don't let them get to you. They just worry about him. You know you're the one holding everything together." I soaked up her words like a man dying of thirst. Finally, someone saw it. Someone understood. I gave her a grateful look. But then I saw it. As she patted my arm, her eyes flickered across the table to meet my mother's. It was a lightning-fast exchange. A question asked and answered in a single glance. A flicker of alliance. The unease in my gut tightened. At the time, I dismissed it as paranoia, a symptom of my growing cynicism. But it was a seed of doubt, planted in the fertile ground of my resentment. It was a tell in a high-stakes poker game I didn't even know I was playing. The conversation meandered, eventually landing on my father's complaints about his warehouse job. "The new manager is half my age," he grumbled into his pasta. "No respect. I'm too old for this." "Well, Richard, just hold on a little longer," my mother said, sighing dramatically. "Once Leo's project takes off, you can finally put your feet up. That inheritance from your father won't last forever." The implication hung in the air, thick and heavy as the smell of garlic. Leo's fantasy was their shared retirement plan. My salary was the bridge to that fantasy. And any family money, like a small inheritance my dad had received, was just kindling for Leo's fires, while my earnings were the solid logs that kept the whole thing from collapsing. When the check came, the server, who had waited on us many times, placed it wordlessly beside my plate. I reached for my wallet. The worn leather felt heavy. As I laid the credit card down, I had a strange out-of-body experience. I saw myself at the table. A quiet, well-dressed man methodically paying for the lives of everyone around him. They weren't even looking. They were already discussing what to do next weekend. I wasn't their son or their brother. I was their benefactor. I was the silent, unacknowledged investor in the messy, unprofitable startup called My Family. And I was about to go bankrupt. The wound that refused to heal, the one that festered beneath all the subsequent cuts and bruises, had been inflicted 2 years earlier. It was the reason the word homeowner tasted like ash in my mouth. For 7 years, I had lived a life of monastic discipline. While my friends were buying new cars and going on trips to Thailand, I was driving a 10-year-old Civic and putting a non-negotiable 15% of every paycheck into a high-yield savings account. It was my down payment fund. It was my mantra. After nearly a decade of scrimping, I finally did it. I had the magic number. Enough for a solid 20% down payment on a decent one-bedroom condo. Enough to escape the trap of renting and finally own a piece of my own life. I still have the pre-approval letter from the bank somewhere. For me, it was more than a document. It was a trophy. It was proof that my sacrifices had meant something. I had spent hours on real estate websites, bookmarking listings, imagining where my life would fit inside those small, perfect rectangles of possibility. Then came the phone call. It was my father. His voice on the line was different, laced with a carefully curated panic. "Daniel, son, there's a problem. A serious one with Leo. Leo's latest foolproof get-rich-quick scheme. A high-end t-shirt company co-founded with a friend who vanished the moment things got tough, had imploded in spectacular fashion. Not only was the investment gone, but they were also on the hook for a massive bill from the overseas supplier. and the supplier wasn't willing to negotiate. They were talking about lawyers and international collections agencies. "This could destroy him, Daniel," my dad said, his voice dropping to a dramatic whisper. "A judgment against him would follow him for years. He's only 24. His life would be over before it started. We can't let that happen to your brother." I was standing in my kitchen, staring at that pre-approval letter on my counter. Felt like it was mocking me. "How much is it?" I asked, a cold knot of dread forming in my stomach. The number he gave me was horrifying in its precision. It was almost exactly the amount in my down payment fund. I can't," I stammered, the words catching in my throat. "Dad, that's everything I have. It's for my condo. I've been saving for 7 years." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy and judgmental. When he finally spoke, his voice was glacial. "A condo? You're talking about 4 walls and a roof when your brother's entire future is on the line? Daniel, for God's sake. This is family. You're the eldest. It is your responsibility to step up. This is what families do. They protect each other." He had done it. With a few perfectly chosen words, he had framed my dream as a selfish indulgence and their catastrophic failure as my moral duty. He weaponized the very concept of family, turning it into a bludgeon of obligation. To say no wouldn't just be unhelpful. It would be a fundamental betrayal of who I was supposed to be. What choice did I have? The next morning, I walked into my bank with the wire transfer information. The teller who helped me was the same woman who had congratulated me on my pre-approval just a week before. She didn't say anything, but I could see the pity in her eyes as I authorized the transfer. I watched my dream, digitized into a single number on a screen, vanish with a click. Leo's gratitude was a fleeting, casual "Thanks, man. I owe you one." My parents' praise for doing the right thing felt hollow and self-serving. They didn't celebrate my sacrifice. They celebrated their own relief. The worst part wasn't the loss of the money. It was the loss of the belief that my life was my own. That day, they taught me that any foundation I built could, and would be requisitioned at any time to prop up their own crumbling structures. My dream hadn't just been postponed. It had been sacrificed. And I was the one who had led it to the altar. Back to that fateful Tuesday. My mother's Thanksgiving ultimatum was not the blow she intended. Instead of knocking me down, it was like a bucket of ice water to the face. The fog of obligation I'd lived in for years was gone, replaced by a cold, surgical clarity. For years, I had been trying to fix a rigged game. Now, I was finally ready to stop playing. I sat at my laptop, a grim sense of purpose settling over me. I opened my browser and logged into my online banking portal. It looked like a map of my own servitude, a web of financial connections that all led back to me. It was time to start cutting the threads. The family cell phone plan was first. For lines, 1 account, my name at the top. I navigated to the account settings, found the transfer of liability form, and filled in my father's information. The system prompted me with a final, almost poetic question. "You will no longer be responsible for payments on this account. Are you sure you wish to proceed?" A humorless laugh escaped me. I clicked yes with a force that vibrated through the cheap particle board of my desk. 1 cord cut. Next, the car insurance. Leo's premiums were a small fortune, a testament to his belief that traffic laws were merely suggestions. My name on the policy was the only thing keeping his rates from reaching stratospheric levels. I found the Manage Drivers section. Click. Remove Leo from policy. A pop-up warned that this could significantly increase the premium for the remaining drivers. Good, I muttered. Click. Confirm. An automated email was on its way to my parents. Another cord cut. The list went on. The premium subscription for the streaming bundle they watched every night. The credit card I'd given my mom years ago for true emergencies, which had somehow come to include weekly grocery runs and quarterly trips to the nail salon. I lowered the credit limit to $1. Then, the most significant one, the automatic monthly transfer labeled Family Support. I clicked Delete Recurring Payment. With each click, I felt a physical sensation, like a heavy cloak being lifted from my shoulders, pound by pound. I was performing surgery on my own life, removing a parasitic attachment. The reaction was almost instantaneous. My phone, which had been silent, exploded to life. It was a digital carpet bombing. A text from Leo, filled with typos and fury. Dude, WTTF? My data isn't working? I was in the middle of a trade. My fingers flew. You're 26, Leo. Welcome to the world of paying your own bills. A text from my mom. Daniel, call me immediately. I just received a fraud alert from the credit card. This is not a funny prank. I typed back a single sentence. It's not fraud, Mom. It's a boundary. Then the calls began. Voicemails filled up my inbox. Each one a different flavor of manipulation. My dad's was a low growl of intimidation. Daniel, call me. Now. You've made your point. Now stop this nonsense. My mom's was a masterpiece of tear-choked melodrama. Daniel, honey, I don't know what we did to deserve this cruelty. Please pick up. You're scaring me. When their direct assault failed, they deployed their flying monkeys. A text from my cousin, Mark, who I hadn't heard from in 6 months. Hey man, your mom is really upset. Heard you're being a real jerk to them. Not cool. After all they did for you, all they did for me, it was their foundational myth. They had raised me, yes, but they had raised me to be a crop they could harvest at will. I finally switched my phone to silent mode and flipped it face down on the counter. The screen continued to light up in the periphery, a silent, frantic strobe light signaling their collective panic. They weren't panicking because they were worried about me. They were panicking because the machine that dispensed consequence-free living had just gone offline. And they had no idea how to operate in a world where actions had price tags. Amidst the barrage of frantic, angry messages, one name popped up that gave me a moment's pause. Aunt Carol, the diplomat, the one person who had, on occasion, acknowledged the unfairness of my situation. A foolish, desperate part of me still wanted to believe she was an ally. Against my better judgment, I answered her call. Daniel? Oh, thank heavens, I was so worried. She began, her voice a perfectly calibrated instrument of warm concern. I just got off the phone with your mother. She's beside herself, just hysterical. I'm sure she is, I said, my voice hard. Honey, listen to me, she continued, her tone dropping into a confidential whisper. I get it. You have every single right to be angry. They push you too far, Daniel, they always have. I've told Eleanor a million times that she can't treat you like a blank check. The validation felt like a cool drink of water in the desert. My shoulders relaxed a fraction. Maybe I wasn't entirely alone. Well, I'm done being their blank check, Carol. The account is closed. I hear you, and I support you 100%, she said, her words a soothing balm. But you have to understand, a shock like this to their system, it's a lot. Your mother isn't as strong as she used to be. You cutting them off so abruptly. She feels like you're trying to destroy her. Maybe just ease into it? A gentler approach? She was a master. She validated my anger while gently trying to steer me back into compliance. And what's this about a job in Dublin? She asked, her voice light and casual, a masterful pivot. Eleanor was rambling. I couldn't make sense of it. It sounds like a fantastic opportunity. Are you really thinking of moving so far away? And like a fool, I drank the poison. Starved for a single drop of encouragement, I told her everything. That it was a big promotion. That I had already signed the contract. That I was leaving on Saturday. I wanted someone, anyone, to be proud of me. Wow, Daniel, that's incredible, she said. And for a second, I thought I heard genuine admiration. A whole new chapter. Well, you have to do what's right for you. Just promise me you'll call your mom. For my sake. Let her down easy. We hung up, and I felt a sliver of hope. Maybe Carol could act as a mediator. Translate my actions into a language my parents could understand. I enjoyed 2 hours of blessed silence. I thought she was working her magic. Then, my phone lit up with a wall of text from my mother. Daniel, I have never been so disgusted and betrayed in my life. After I confided in my own sister about how heartbroken I was, she tells me the truth. You've been planning this for weeks. You took a promotion and plotted your escape to Europe like a coward, waiting for the perfect moment to abandon your family when we needed you most. How could you be so cruel and calculating? Carol told me everything. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. I stared at the screen, the words swimming in front of my eyes. Carol told me everything. It hit me like a physical blow. The call hadn't been an act of diplomacy. It had been a reconnaissance mission. Every sympathetic word, every "I understand," was a carefully crafted tool to extract information. She had collected intelligence and then delivered it to the enemy's headquarters, complete with a narrative that painted me as a cold, plotting villain. Her advice to be gentle was the final twist of the knife, designed to make my resolve seem like an even greater act of cruelty. The betrayal was somehow colder and more profound than my parents' predictable entitlement. This was from someone I thought was a friend, a confidant. I felt utterly, completely alone, and I finally understood. This wasn't a negotiation. It was an extraction, and the only way out was to get clean away. The next 2 days at the office were a strange dance of farewells and high tension. I was a man living a double life. In the open, I was the successful engineer, smiling through goodbye lunches and promising to keep in touch. Internally, I was a soldier in a foxhole, constantly checking my phone for the next incoming attack. Feeling the immense pressure, I made a critical error in judgment. I confided in a colleague named David. David and I were on the same team. We weren't best friends, but we had a solid working relationship. We'd grab beers, complain about deadlines, talk about sports. He seemed like a decent stand-up guy. During a coffee break, he pulled me aside. "Hey man, you okay? You seem like you're a million miles away." And fool that I was, grateful for the crumb of human concern, I let some of it spill out. I didn't get into the nitty-gritty of the gambling debt, but I told him I was under an immense amount of family pressure, and that the move to Dublin was about more than just a promotion. It was about drawing a line in the sand for my own sanity. "Wow, that's heavy," David said, his face a perfect mask of sympathy. He shook his head. "I can't even imagine. Good for you, though. Seriously, this Dublin thing is a once-in-a-lifetime shot. You more than earned it." His words were a balm on my frayed nerves. I felt seen. I felt validated. I felt, for a moment, that I wasn't just some dysfunctional outlier, but a normal person dealing with a tough situation. The next day, my manager, Tom, called me into his office. The door clicked shut behind me, and the sound seemed ominous. Tom was a fair boss, but he was corporate to the core. His job was to mitigate risk for the company. "Have a seat, Daniel," he said, not smiling. I sat, my stomach tightening into a knot. "Let me be direct," he started, building a small steeple with his fingers on his desk. "The Dublin project is a cornerstone of our European expansion. The role you're stepping into is high visibility and high pressure. We need a team leader who is unshakably focused." "I understand that, Tom," I said, my confusion growing. "And I'm fully committed. I'm ready to hit the ground running." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I have to be sure. I've had some chatter brought to my attention. Rumors of some significant personal turmoil you're experiencing. A highly unstable family situation. Things that might create a serious distraction or, worse, affect your judgment and long-term stability in the role." The air left my lungs. Chatter. There was only one person I had told. David. The words Tom was using, unstable family situation, distraction, were plucked directly from my own vulnerable confession. David hadn't offered sympathy. He had gathered ammunition. He was jealous of the promotion. I saw it all in a flash. His fake smile, his too enthusiastic congratulations. He had taken my moment of weakness and tried to turn it into a professional execution. He wasn't a friend. He was a shark that smelled blood in the water. A cold rage, clean and sharp, cut through my panic. I took a slow, deliberate breath. "Tom," I began, my voice even and strong. "I appreciate your directness, so let me be equally direct. Am I dealing with a difficult family situation? Yes. But it's crucial you understand the context. The reason I am so deeply committed to this promotion is because it is the solution to that situation, not a casualty of it. It represents the focus, stability, and future I have built for myself. My performance review last quarter exceeds expectations, wasn't it? It was, Tom acknowledged. My project delivery rate is the highest on the team. Has my work ever been anything less than excellent? No, it hasn't. Then you have your answer, I concluded, holding his gaze. You're not sending a man with a problem to Dublin. You're sending a man who has solved his problem. You will have my undivided attention and my absolute best work, because for the first time in my career, my energy won't be siphoned off before I even walk through the office doors. He assessed me for a long, silent moment. I didn't flinch. I had let my family define me for years. I wasn't about to let David do it. All right, Daniel, he said finally, leaning back in his chair with a nod. Point taken. Just make sure you deliver. Dublin is a big stage. I walked out of that office a different person. The betrayal stung, but beneath it was a bedrock of self-respect I hadn't realized was there. I had faced down an attack, defended my own worth, and won. It was another crucial piece of armor clicking into place, just in time for the final battle. That night, I was surrounded by a sea of cardboard boxes and packing tape. My apartment, my sanctuary, was being systematically dismantled. It was messy and chaotic, but it was the chaos of progress, of escape. Around 9 p.m., the intercom buzzer shattered the silence. The noise was harsh, aggressive, making me jump out of my skin. I wasn't expecting Chloe for another hour. I pressed the talk button. Hello. Only static answered. Then the buzzer blared again, this time held down for a solid 10 seconds. A long, angry shriek that felt like a declaration of war. A chill snaked up my spine. I crept to the front door, my heart pounding, and peered through the peephole. My father. He stood in the sterile light of the hallway, his face a mask of grim determination. He looked older than I'd ever seen him, worn down, but his posture was rigid with purpose. A wave of pity, a ghost of old affection, washed over me. I almost reached for the lock. Then he raised his fist and pounded on the door. Not a knock. It was a heavy, thudding blow that shook the door in its frame. Thud, thud, thud. Daniel, I know you're in there. Open this damn door right now. We are going to talk about this, face to face. My blood ran cold. This was their strategy then. When the digital assault failed, they escalated to a physical one. They were laying siege to my home. I backed away from the door, my breathing shallow. I stood in the middle of my living room, frozen. I felt like a fugitive in my own apartment. His phone came out. A second later, mine vibrated in my pocket. The screen lit up. Dad. I stared at it until the call went to voicemail. He hammered on the door again, even harder this time. Don't you dare hide from me, Daniel. This is not how a son treats his father. Your mother is sick with worry. She hasn't slept in 2 days because of what you're doing. The words were designed to pierce my conscience, to find the old guilt and twist. But all I heard was the desperation of a man who had lost control and was trying to regain it through brute force and emotional blackmail. My fingers, shaking, typed a text to Chloe. Change of plans. My dad is here, outside my apartment, don't come yet. It's bad. Her reply was instantaneous. Oh my God. Are you safe? Don't you open that door, Daniel. Whatever you do, call the police if you have to. Her words were a steel rod for my spine. I was not overreacting. This was not normal. I stood there, listening to him leave a long, rambling voicemail, his voice shifting from anger to pleading and back again. After all we've done, don't throw your family away. Just think about your mother. I heard him try the doorknob one last time, a futile, rattling sound. I heard him sigh, a ragged sound of defeat. Through the peephole, I watched him turn and walk away, his shoulders slumped. He looked like a defeated general retreating from a failed campaign. The moment his footsteps faded down the stairwell, I collapsed against the door, sliding down to the floor. I was shaking, not from fear, but from the sheer, sustained pressure of it all. He hadn't just knocked on my door. He had tried to knock down my resolve. And for the first time in my life I had held. The door remained locked. The boundary remained intact. My last day in the United States was a flurry of final errands and anxious clock watching. Every buzz of my phone made me jump. I just needed to survive until my 6 a.m. flight. That evening, as I was taping up the last box, my phone lit up with an incoming video call. From my mom. My thumb hovered over the decline button, but then I noticed the small icons in the corner indicating a group call. My entire family was on the line. A dark, morbid curiosity took hold. This was it. The grand finale. The final appeal before the highest court. I took a deep breath, braced myself for the storm, and accepted the call. My screen fractured into 3 panels of judgment. In one, my mom and dad were squeezed together on their familiar living room couch, their faces pale and drawn, illuminated by a single harsh lamp. They looked like hostages in their own home. In another panel, Leo was lounging in his bedroom, a gaming headset around his neck, radiating an aura of petulant arrogance. And then there was me, a grainy image from my phone propped against a stack of boxes, the accused in the digital dock. Daniel, my mother began, her voice a fragile, trembling thing. It was her courtroom voice, designed to elicit maximum sympathy from the jury. We're doing this because you've left us no other choice. You've been ignoring our calls, our texts. You've been acting with such cruelty. We just want to understand. I think I've made myself perfectly clear, I replied, my own voice surprisingly steady. The chaos of the past few days had burned away the anxiety, leaving behind a core of cold resolve. Leo let out a derisive snort from his panel. Clear? You've been a colossal jerk, that's what's been clear. You completely embarrassed me. My own brother treats me like I'm some kind of charity case. I couldn't help the sharp, humorless laugh that escaped my lips. A charity case? Leo, did you or did you not send me a text demanding, not asking, but demanding, that I financially support you and our parents indefinitely after you decided to quit your job? It was a temporary measure, he shot back, his face flushing with anger. It was for my mental health, okay? You have no idea the pressure I was under, but you couldn't see that. You just saw dollar signs. You're right, I do see dollar signs, I countered, my voice hardening. Thousands of them. My dollar signs. The ones that paid for your failed t-shirt business, your 3-week film career, your car insurance, your cell phone. That is enough. My father's voice exploded from the couch. He had been a silent, simmering volcano until now. You will show your brother some respect. He is in a fragile state, and all you can do is kick him when he's down and boast about your salary. We thought we raised a better man than that. You raised me to be responsible, I corrected him. And I was responsible for my own life and for all of yours too. But I'm not doing it anymore. Yes, I have a promotion. Yes, I have a new life waiting for me. And it's waiting because I earned it, while you were all enabling him to earn nothing. My mom put a hand to her chest and her eyes welled up with practiced tears. Selfish. I never thought I'd see my own son be so selfish. After all the sacrifices we made for you, the years we spent raising you. How can you be so ungrateful? It was the guilt bomb, their ultimate weapon, polished from years of use. It was designed to make me feel like a monster. But this time it was a dud. Sacrifices. I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Let's talk about sacrifices, Mom. Tell me about the sacrifice of my condo down payment, the one that disappeared to fix Leo's mess. Was that yours or mine? What about my last 3 vacations, all of which I canceled because of last-minute emergencies at home? Who sacrificed? Who has been paying the premium on your We're a Family insurance policy for the last decade, with my own dreams as the deductible? A shocked silence filled the digital space. I had broken the unspoken rule. I had brought out the receipts. My father's face was a thundercloud. You've been keeping score? Like some kind of accountant? The help you give your family, you hold it against us. You're damn right I've been keeping score, I said, the words a torrent now. Because when one person is doing all the giving and everyone else is doing all the taking, it's not a family. It's a heist. And I'm finally walking away from the scene of the crime. My raw, unfiltered declaration seemed to shatter their united front. The flimsy facade of a concerned family intervention crumbled to dust, exposing the raw, ugly desperation beneath. "You can't walk away!" my mother shrieked, her voice losing its sorrowful quiver and gaining a sharp, panicked edge. "It's not that simple. You have no idea what is really going on." "Then tell me," I challenged, leaning closer to the phone. My apartment was quiet, but my heart was pounding a frantic rhythm. "Tell me the truth. All of it. What's so important that it warrants this level of meltdown? This isn't just about Leo needing a few bucks to get by. This is something else. Something you're terrified of." I saw my father flash a panicked look at my mother. She gave the slightest shake of her head, a silent plea to hold the line. But I saw the weakness. I saw the crack in their story. "What is it, Dad?" I pressed, my voice low and relentless. "What are you hiding?" He was the one who broke. My father, the stoic, the quiet enforcer, crumpled. He dropped his head into his hands, his shoulders shaking. The silence was his surrender. It was my mother who finally spoke, her voice suddenly stripped of all emotion, flat and dead as a winter landscape. "Your brother is in trouble, Daniel. A kind of trouble that money you've given before can't fix." "What else is new?" I said acidly. "He didn't quit his job," she said, her eyes fixed on something over my shoulder, as if she couldn't bear to look at me. "He was fired weeks ago. He's been pretending to go to work. And it's not about his mental health. He has debts. Massive ones. I've paid his debts a dozen times." "Not like this." My father's muffled voice came from behind his hands. He looked up, his face gray and defeated. "It's not from a business venture, son. It's gambling." The word landed with a thud in the center of my chest. Gambling. Of course. It was the missing piece of the puzzle. It explained everything. The constant, desperate need for cash, the secrecy, the string of vague failures that never quite added up. "How much?" I asked, the question coming out as a whisper. My mother's gaze flickered to Leo's video panel. He was staring at the floor, the smugness gone, replaced by the sullen look of a trapped animal. "Tell him, Leo. For once in your life, you tell him the truth." Leo remained silent. "He won't say," my father said, his voice ragged. "It's $150,000, Daniel. $150,000. The number was so ludicrous, so catastrophically large, it felt like a line from a movie. I felt a hysterical urge to laugh. "The people he owes money to," my mother continued, her voice trembling with what sounded, for the first time, like genuine fear. "They are not patient people. They gave us a deadline. It's this Friday. We tried to get a second mortgage on the house, to get a lawyer, do something, but the bank won't approve it. Our credit is shot. They said the only way was with a cosigner, someone with a high salary, an impeccable credit score. And there it was, the real story, the ugly, unvarnished truth. This entire circus, the threats, the guilt, the siege at my door. It was all a desperate, elaborate scheme to get my signature on a loan document. They needed to tether my entire financial future to their catastrophe to save themselves. They weren't just asking me to help them float. They were asking me to be their anchor as they sank to the bottom. "You are asking me," I said, spelling it out slowly, as if to make myself believe it, "to co-sign a $150,000 loan for a gambling addict who is unemployed and has shown no capacity for responsibility in his entire life. You're the only hope we have," my mother sobbed. "You have to. We're family." Just then, at that precise moment of supreme emotional blackmail, my phone screen lit up with an incoming call. It was a number I didn't recognize, with an Irish country code. On a wild hunch, I knew who it was. Liam Miller, the CEO. Without breaking eye contact with the horrified faces on my screen, I answered the call, putting it on speaker. "Daniel, Liam Miller here. A cheerful, energetic voice with a thick Irish accent filled the room. "Sorry for the late call. Just wanted to personally confirm that your flight details are all set. We've arranged a car to pick you up at the airport. The whole Dublin team is chomping at the bit to have you. We're expecting great things from you, son." I looked from my past to my future, at the frantic, pleading faces of my family, and at the disembodied voice on the phone, offering respect, opportunity, and a way out. "Thank you, Mr. Miller," I said, my voice clear and impossibly calm. "I am looking forward to it more than you can possibly know. I won't let you down. I know you won't. Safe travels." He hung up. I switched back to the video call. 3 faces stared back at me, frozen in a state of shock and dawning horror. I let the silence hang there for a beat, a sweet, perfect moment of clarity. Then, I looked straight into the camera at my mother, my father, and my brother, and I delivered the verdict they had been dreading. No. The word was quiet, but it echoed with the force of a slammed door. "No, I will not be your financial savior. This is not my debt. This is not my problem. I suggest you sell the house and find a very good bankruptcy lawyer." My mother's mouth opened, a silent scream forming on her lips, but I didn't wait to hear it. I hit the red end call icon. The 3 panels of my past vanished, leaving only my own reflection staring back at me from the dark screen. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my own life. Thank you for sticking with me to this point. You guys are amazing. If you're still here, do me a favor and hit that like button and comment with a 1 down below, just so I know you made it this far with me. It doesn't just help more people find this story. It lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to keep sharing the rest of this journey. The silence that descended on my apartment after that call was absolute. It was the silence of a battlefield after the fighting stops. It was over, for about 30 seconds. Then came the text messages, the last, desperate volleys from a defeated army. They were no longer manipulative. They were pure, distilled rage. From my mother, "I hope you are happy with what you've done. You have torn this family apart. You are no son of mine." From Leo, "When they come for Dad because of his debt, and they will, that's on you. I'll never speak to you again. You're dead to me." From my father, the one that almost hurt, "I have never been so profoundly disappointed in another human being. You are a stranger to me." I read each one clinically like a doctor examining a pathology report. The familiar sting of their disapproval, a pain that had shaped my entire life, was gone. It was replaced by a strange, hollow sense of peace. You can't be hurt by a weapon once you've walked out of its range. I wasn't their son or brother anymore. I was a stranger. They had said it themselves. Methodically, I blocked their numbers. My mother, my father, my brother, my aunt, my cousin. It felt like a digital exorcism, casting out the ghosts that had haunted me for years. A few hours later, I was scrolling through my phone one last time before trying to get some sleep, when a notification from Facebook popped up. My cousin Mark had tagged me in a public post. It was from my mother. She had crafted a masterpiece of public victimhood. It was a long, melodramatic essay on the heartbreak of raising an ungrateful son. It spoke of how his success had poisoned his soul, turning him cold and materialistic. It alluded vaguely to a family crisis, and how he had turned his back on them in their darkest hour, choosing a fancy promotion over his own blood. The gambling, the debt, the truth, all of it was conveniently omitted. It was a work of fiction designed to win her the sympathy of her friends and paint me as a monster. The comments section was a sickening tableau of support. "Oh, Eleanor, you poor thing. Sending prayers. Some children just forget where they came from." The old Daniel would have been horrified. He would have jumped into the comments, frantically trying to defend himself, to explain the context, to plead his case. The new Daniel simply untagged himself from the photo, reported the post for harassment for good measure, and then deactivated his account. Their version of the story could live in their little echo chamber. I was moving to a different continent, one where their opinions had no currency. The final piece of fallout came from an unexpected source. A text from Chloe. "Hey, just got a truly bizarre voicemail from your mother. She was crying, said you were destroying the family and that I needed to talk some sense into you. I told her that our relationship was none of her business and that if she ever called my number again, I'd consider it harassment. Then I blocked her. I hope that was okay." I smiled, a real, genuine smile. "That was more than okay," I typed back. "It was perfect. Thank you. I've got your back," she replied. "Always." In that moment, I understood the difference. My family's idea of love was a chain, a thing of obligation and debt. This simple act of solidarity from Chloe was what real support felt like. It wasn't about demanding loyalty. It was about offering it freely and without condition. And it was all I needed to face the next chapter. 6 months later, I was standing on a small balcony overlooking a cobblestone street in Dublin, a cup of strong coffee warming my hands. The Irish sky was a familiar shade of gray, but it felt different from the oppressive gray I had left behind. This was a soft gray, a quiet gray. It was the color of peace. The man who had numbly boarded that flight 6 months ago was not the same man standing here now. That version of me was a tightly coiled knot of anxiety and guilt, running on the fumes of a life-altering decision. He had been bracing for impact, waiting for the regret to set in. But the regret never came. The first few weeks were undeniably tough. The silence in my new apartment was loud. It was a silence filled with the ghosts of unanswered questions. But slowly, I realized it was a different kind of silence. The silence of my old life had been heavy, pregnant with unspoken demands and simmering resentments. This was a clean silence, the silence of a blank page. Work became my sanctuary. Liam Miller, my new boss, was a man of his word. He gave me autonomy, trusted my judgment, and valued my contributions. For the first time, I was judged solely on the quality of my work, not on my willingness to be the family martyr. My ideas were listened to. I was given a team to lead on a major project. I saw my salary deposited into my bank account, and I felt a sense of ownership that was entirely new. This money was mine. My future was mine. I started to build a life tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. I found a pub around the corner where the bartender, a gruff old man named Seamus, knew my name and my order. I made friends. Liam, a fellow engineer on my team, became a close friend. He was funny and irreverent, with a deep love for his city. He dragged me on weekend trips to Galway and Cork, introducing me to the Ireland that existed beyond the tourist maps. One Friday after work, we were sitting in the pub, pints of Guinness in hand. "You know, Daniel," Liam said, after I'd told him a heavily sanitized version of why I'd left the States. "It sounds to me like you declared your independence. Good on you. Life's too short to be living it for someone else." It was that simple. There was no judgment, no psychoanalysis, just a straightforward acceptance of my decision. These new friendships were built on mutual respect, not on a hidden economy of obligation. It was revolutionary. Chloe's visit that spring was the final, critical piece of my reconstruction. I remember standing at the airport arrivals gate, my heart pounding with an entirely different kind of anticipation. When she walked through the doors and I saw her face light up, I felt a sense of completion, of rightness, that I had never known. We spent 2 weeks being unapologetic tourists. We walked the cliffs of Maher, the wind so strong it felt like it could strip you clean of all your past sins. We listened to hauntingly beautiful music in a tiny, crowded pub in Doolin. One evening, we were sitting by the fire in our rented cottage, a comfortable silence between us. "You're different," she said suddenly, looking at me. "I mean, you're still you, but the tension is gone. The weight you used to carry in your shoulders, it's not there anymore." I knew she was right. I felt it. I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. I had been so terrified of what I would lose by leaving. A family, a home, a history. I never stopped to consider what I might gain. Myself. Just as I began to believe the past was truly past, an email arrived that pulled me back for a moment. The subject line was startling. "A long overdue apology from Sophie, Leo's ex. My finger hovered over the delete button. Sophie was a ghost from a life I no longer lived. She was a sweet girl who had been caught in Leo's orbit and, I assumed, had been spun a well-rehearsed tale of my villainy. But curiosity, a dangerous human trait, won out. I opened it. The email was long and painfully honest. "Dear Daniel," it began, "I am writing this email with no expectation of a reply. I just feel I owe you a massive, sincere apology. For the entire time Leo and I were together, I was fed a steady diet of stories about you. You were the cold, judgmental brother, obsessed with money and your career. He told me you looked down on his creative soul, that your parents were just trying to mediate, caught between their two very different sons. I drank it all in, pitied him. I thought you were the problem. How incredibly naive I was. The real story, as I'm sure you know, came out after he and I split up. And it was so much worse than I could have imagined. It wasn't just a few bad bets, Daniel. It was a disease. I found out he had taken out credit cards in my name. He had drained the small college fund my parents had set aside for my little sister. He had convinced me to loan him money for a surefire investment that I now know went straight to a bookie. He didn't just owe $150,000 to those sharks. He had systematically bled everyone around him dry for years. The final loan they wanted you to co-sign wasn't a plan to save him. It was their last-ditch effort to save the house, the one asset he hadn't yet managed to gamble away. It was a plan to make you pay for all of it. I know now that you weren't being cold. You were being rational. You weren't turning your back. You were saving your life. I just needed to say it. I am so deeply sorry for ever doubting you. I hope you found happiness and peace. You certainly earned it. Sincerely, Sophie. I had to read the email twice to fully absorb it. The validation was so absolute, so complete, that it almost felt unreal. Every secret fear, every paranoid suspicion I'd ever harbored, was true. In fact, the reality was even grimmer. The web of deceit was more tangled and more malicious than I had ever guessed. If I had signed that paper, I wouldn't just be paying a debt. I would have been shouldering the financial and emotional wreckage of a decade of his destruction. My escape wasn't just a good choice. It had been a life-saving one. A few days later, a voicemail appeared on my phone from an unknown number. My policy was to ignore them, but something made me press play. The voice was thin, hesitant, and weathered by a storm I had only seen from a distance. It was my mother, but it was a version of her I had never encountered before. Stripped of all her weapons, all her drama, it was just the voice of a tired old woman. "Daniel," she began, a slight tremor in her words. It's your mother. I'm not calling to ask for anything. I wanted to know if you are okay. That is all. We are managing. Your father and I sold the house. It was for the best. We are in a small apartment now. Leo is in a long-term treatment program. He has a long way to go. I hope you are well, honey. Be safe." The line clicked. She was gone. No tears. No demands. No guilt. It was the first honest communication I had received from her in my entire adult life. It was an echo from the wreckage, a sign of life from a distant, foreign shore. It's been over a year now. I'm walking home from work along the river Liffey, the lights from the bridges casting shimmering reflections on the dark water. Life has found a new rhythm, a steady, peaceful cadence that I cherish. I never did call my mother back. The voicemail is still saved on my phone, a strange, quiet artifact from another lifetime. Maybe someday I'll be ready to have that conversation. Maybe not. The profound, beautiful, earth-shattering difference is that the choice is now mine. It will be on my terms, in my time. That is the definition of freedom. For decades, I operated under the crippling misconception that to be loved, I had to be indispensable. I believed my family's bottomless need for me was the ultimate proof of my value. But it wasn't. It was the proof of my function. A hammer is needed to drive a nail. A wallet is needed to pay a bill. A person is loved for who they are, not for what they can provide. I had to fly 3,000 miles to learn that simple, powerful lesson. Real love, the kind I am building with Chloe, The kind I share with my friends over a pint in a noisy pub, is not a debt to be paid. It's not a contract of endless obligation. It is a shelter. Steadies you. It champions your growth, rather than demanding your sacrifice. It is a force that replenishes you, not one that systematically drains you dry. I don't know what the future holds for the people I left behind in America. I truly hope Leo finds a way to conquer his demons. I hope my parents can find a measure of peace in the quiet of their new, smaller life. But their story is no longer my story. My name is no longer in their book. My only responsibility now is to the man I have become, a man who is building a life, not just bankrolling one. Sometimes, setting a boundary feels like an act of aggression, can feel like you're building a wall. But I've learned that's not it at all. It's not about shutting the world out. It's about building a home for yourself, a place with a solid foundation and a locked door, where you get to decide who has a key. And from the safety of that home, you can finally find your peace. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it resonated with you in some way. Have you ever been in a situation where you had to make a hard choice to protect your own peace? I'd be honored to hear about your experience in the comments below. And please, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss what comes next. Take care of yourselves.